Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon to those who are here with us at Blake Library and Stewart and those who are online. We're going to get the meeting started. I'm Alex Kelly, Secretary of Commerce for the state of Florida. We've got our long-term recovery team here from our Division of Community Development. Justin, is there anything that we need to do, housekeeping, recording, anything like that, or we're good to go?
I think we're good to go. We'll do public comment at the end.
Well, perfect. Well, again, Alex Kelly, thank you all for joining us, and particularly we also have a number of individuals online, and this is one of the last few meetings that we're doing regarding Florida's recovery from both the 2023 and 2024 storms, as it relates to the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Plan that FloridaCommerce is charged by the governor in Florida law for implementing for the state of Florida for the 2023-2024 storms like hurricanes Milton, Helene, Debbie, the different other tornadoes that we had those years, Hurricane Idalia. And so we appreciate everyone being here with us. I think this is just around our 66th or 67th meeting. Is that right?
It'll be over 70.
Close to 70 meetings. We've been doing meetings in 47 different counties, have been in every county at least once before, in some cases a couple times before this. And this is a really important process. So we really appreciate everyone who's joining us both in person and online. I'll just give maybe some opening thoughts, Justin, and then I'll turn it over to you and the team. But of course, here in Martin County, in this part of the state, in 2024 in particular experienced some really devastating tornadoes and the overall impacts of the hurricanes, but really in particular some of the tornadoes. Tragically, lives were lost in a couple communities here, and still today there are Floridians in this part of the state and other parts of the state who are displaced in one way or another, either because of a need related to housing or their job or some sort of infrastructure in the community. And that's the point of these meetings really, is to the state, this Florida Department of Commerce implements a significant amount of funds and resources that the federal HUD agency gives to us on behalf of a congressional appropriation, and we implement those funds to support communities' specific needs as it relates to, again, housing, infrastructure, and mitigation. So input from residents in Martin County up to this point, and again here today, makes a real difference in how we, FloridaCommerce, implement those funds to ultimately help people truly, fully, long-term recover. I'll give a couple, overarching points that I'm sure will come up. Everything that we're talking about here today, here in Stewart, Florida, if you go to www.floridajobs.org/2023 and 2024 storms, all this information is also available on the website, including the main reason why we're here is the state's draft recovery plan that is on that website. Will be on that website till the middle of this month, when the 21st of April, we have to then submit that plan officially to HUD. So that plan, this team started around the state in February and March, having those meetings, sometimes hitting 2 and 3 counties in the same day, having those meetings to collect input, craft that plan, post that plan for public comment for a period of 30 days, and then we have to turn around on April 21 and submit that plan to HUD ultimately for their approval, so that we can then start to actually deploy those housing, infrastructure, and mitigation type resources to communities, to 47 counties throughout the state. So again, we appreciate you all being here. That draft plan is there on the website. The team will go through the details of that, but it's critically important to make sure that as we deploy those resources, that we understand specifically what this community needs that might be different than the neighboring counties and counties across the state. So thank you all so much for being here. Justin, before I turn to you, I just want to thank you and your team. This is around the 70th meeting. Your team's done an incredible job. I think a lot of you have probably not seen your loved ones for a few days because of this, but it's incredibly important work as we try to deploy these resources. So thank you and your team. And with that, Deputy Secretary Justin Domer.
Thank you, Secretary Kelly. We do appreciate you being here today, taking the time out of your busy schedule. And then all of the folks here in the audience and the folks online, again, thank you for joining us. Like Secretary Kelly mentioned, we're going to go through the process of the funds and then the process of the action plan and then a timeline of what that looks like and where we are today. But I do want to introduce a couple other folks here with us. Alicia Behena, she is the Bureau Chief over our subrecipient programs in the Office of Long-Term Resiliency. And then we have Tom Hartman over here to our right. He is the Bureau Chief over our housing programs in the Office of Long-Term Resiliency. So, and as Secretary Kelly mentioned, these two have both been on the road. We've all been working very hard to ensure that we reach as many folks as possible in our 47 eligible counties. So a little bit of background here on the slide that you can see. So FloridaCommerce is the governor's designated agency for all of the HUD funds, and those do include the community development disaster recovery funds, and also the mitigation funds as far as involved in that as well. So the Office of Long-Term Resiliency is the office that we administer those funds through for housing, infrastructure, and economic development purposes. That is also referred to as Rebuild Florida. So Rebuild Florida was launched in 2018. That was the Hermine, Matthew, and Irma storms are the oldest storms that we have currently in the office, and we're closing out Hermine, Matthew. Another thing to highlight is the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds, CDBG-DR. Those are intended to be last resort funds. So what that means is someone, if we're talking in the housing side, someone that has exhausted FEMA dollars and if they had insurance dollars, and then so the DR funds pick up where those left off. That's also the same for communities as well. And then we do focus the funds on those most vulnerable folks in our state, the Floridians. So next slide, please. And then a little bit, again, why we are here. So early January, HUD made the formal announcement that the state of Florida would be receiving a little over $925 million of CDBG-DR funds. We've identified 47 counties that are eligible for our programs. And then again, we're going to go through, what that process looks like and how we got to the point where we are today. Another reminder, these funds we're calling them the 2023 and 2024 storms, and that incorporates hurricanes Debbie, Idalia, Helene, Milton, and then the 2024 tornadoes as well. So next slide, please. So this is a really good visual of the 47 counties and also the entitlement communities that are eligible for the funds. And what entitlement community means is those communities, whether it's a county or a city, are receiving direct funds from HUD for the CDBG-DR. And those counties and cities are not eligible for the state funds. So they are going to be running separate programs doing the exact same things that we are doing. Our counties represented here on the map are in the blue and the green, and then the yellow color are the entitlements. And so this is where we've done the full visit of the 47 counties, some of the cities involved in there, and then we've also done the community and the stakeholder workshops as well. Next slide, please. And then I'm going to turn this one over to Tom to show or to go through the visual of the timeline.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Secretary Kelly. So we've given you an idea of why we're here, but let's talk about the when question. When will this funding be available? And we'll start by giving you guys a timeline events for typical CDBG-DR funding historically, how long it's taken to get that funding out the door. So on this slide, you can see sort of a 10-step process, and I'll sort of cut to where we are today. Where we are today is that 30-day public comment period, of which we have about 16, 17 days left until that public comment period wraps up. Once that public comment period wraps up, we'll take a couple days to incorporate that feedback, look at the questions, sort of tailor our action plan, maybe revise it to incorporate that sort of anecdotal feedback. Whereas the sort of data-driven studies have informed the budgets for our activities. That should be happening around April 21st. So after that happens and we submit that action plan to HUD, they'll have about a 45-day period to review it, approve it. Historically, they haven't taken all 45 days. We're hoping we can bump that timeline up to about day 30. We're doing all we can to sort of accelerate each of these steps that you see in this 10-step period. Provided they get it back to us within that 45-day window, most likely case around June 2025, we can start to work with HUD on drafting that grant agreement. Once that grant agreement is executed between HUD and FloridaCommerce, it's at that point that we can start to draw down activity delivery funding, open up our application portals, and start implementing these programs that we're about to talk about. Next slide, please. So FloridaCommerce has received a total allocation of more than $4.3 billion since 2017 for storms occurring in 2016 and beyond. So $4 billion across nearly a dozen presidentially declared disasters, to include the storms that we're talking about today. Hurricane Helene, Milton, Hurricane Debbie, Hurricane Idalia, and the devastating North Florida tornadoes. Across each of those programs, you had $735 million allocated to Hurricane Michael. I want to mention Hurricane Michael. It was a sort of 12-county allocation for FloridaCommerce, of which we implemented a housing program, a variation of the housing repair and replacement program we are going to talk about today. That housing program was the fastest run in the nation. We opened and closed it within a 2-year period, something that we're very proud of. Helped nearly 1,000 households across the Florida Panhandle. So very happy about that. Looking to get better and maybe beat that timeline this time around. Next slide, please. So we've given you a general CDBG-DR timeline just a few slides back, and this timeline you're seeing is going to be unique to sort of these funds, the 2023 and 2024 storms. Over the past 2 months, our office, as Secretary Kelly mentioned, has spoken to community leaders in all 47 counties. That will be funded by FloridaCommerce. As Justin mentioned, 11 counties have their own allocations, so they're sort of doing this entire 10-step process themselves. All the feedback we received was critically important in informing our action plan development, which, as stated before, we intend to submit on April 21st. Next slide, please. So we've talked about the timeline for developing the state action plan and getting to where we're at today, but let's talk about what an action plan is. The state action plan provides a high-level strategy for how the funding will be used to address unmet recovery and resiliency needs following disasters. And FloridaCommerce is the governor-designated state agency leading these efforts to create these action plans and drive this CDBG-DR funding towards the communities who need it the most, implement these programs, and get that funding out the door as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible. The workshops we previously hosted, including this public action plan hearing today, just critically important in helping us on that anecdotal side of making sure the programs that we're designing, we're developing, are in line with the needs of the communities that need the funding the most. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the mid areas or the most impacted and distressed areas. Following publication of the Federal Register notice, which was published on the 16th of January this year, those 47 counties were identified by both HUD and the state of Florida. HUD sort of gets to take a look at the FEMA data, the SBA data, social vulnerability indexes, insurance claim data, sort of a heat map to decide, hey, here is where the funding needs to go first, which they call the HUD mid areas. And then the state of Florida gets to sort of provide some data and use these workshops to say, I think there's, maybe more counties than the 20 that HUD outlined that are in need of this funding. So all told, we have 47 counties that are going to be eligible for the CDBG-DR funding for the 23-24 storm allocation. Next slide, please. So Here you can see the list and the map that'll show the counties that are both state designated and HUD designated. The primary difference between the state and the HUD mid counties outside of what I just mentioned is that 80% of the funding must be spent in those HUD designated mid areas. And then we sort of have the discretion to spend 20% of that funding in our state designated mid areas. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the unmet needs assessment. So when we're creating the action plan, the unmet needs assessment really is the data driven portion of the action plan development, using sort of FEMA data, SBA data, insurance claim, NFIP data to inform those activity budgets. 79% of the 23 and 24 storms unmet needs are in the housing sector. $3 billion approximately, 4% in infrastructure at $147 million, and 17% in the economy at $675 million. These figures are specific to those 47 counties alone, which we are overseeing. Some of the impact of these storms is relatively recent. We understand that recovery is ongoing. As the data becomes available, we'll sort of retool our budgets, retool our design of our programs to consistently ensure that we're tailoring these programs and these budgets to be in line with the needs of the communities. Next slide, please.
Hold on that real fast. I want to add a little bit of flavor to that slide. So wanted to share that one of the reasons that it's so important that we do these public hearings and the 47 different listening sessions across the counties is because sometimes the data doesn't show the full needs of those communities, especially maybe the rural and fiscally constrained. So when we looked at the data and compared it to what we learned on the ground, we learned that there is a greater need in the infrastructure sector, and that's why Secretary Kelly, supported pushing some additional funds to the infrastructure side of this allocation that are greater than what the data shows. Because when we, again, learned from those counties, their needs were greater than what is represented here at only 147 million. So, right.
That's a great point. I mean, these disasters, they start local and they end local, and the community leaders are the ones who know their communities the best. That's why it's so important that we don't just take that data at face value, but we meet with all stakeholders who are going to be involved or impacted positively by these funds. Next slide, please. So here you can see sort of that activity budget breakdown. You can see that allocation of, sort of almost a 50-50 split between infrastructure and housing. And then you can see a little bit towards HMGP, which we realize has consistently been such an important program because of how diverse that funding is.
So the left side is the data that we need, and the right side versus program allocation is how we are proposing to divide up. That's where you'll see we have an admin set aside, that's in the federal regs. And then the planning funds is something that we set aside. And then the housing is where the direct housing programs have come out of that Tom is the bureau chief over. And the infrastructure side is where Felicia's side of the house, where we work directly with those local governments. And like Tom mentioned, the hazard mitigation grant program, we are able to do the 25% match for counties. So the FEMA dollars cover 75%, and then the HUD funds have the ability to do the 25% match. And so that's built inside the $455 million infrastructure funds.
Thank you, Justin. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of those programs that we previously mentioned: the housing program, the infrastructure program, the hazard mitigation grant program. And we'll start with the housing program. So if we go to the next slide, we can see some of the sort of high level, sort of informational bullets that will talk about this housing program. The housing repair and replacement program, the point of the exercise really is simple. We're taking homes that were damaged by these 23 and 24 disasters. It can be one, it can be multiple. We understand that the Big Bend area was hit incredibly hard. We're going to go out, we're going to do a damage assessment. We're going to figure out what we have to do. Is this a simple repair job where we're just taking a roof off and we're putting a new roof on, or is this a full demolition and we're rebuilding that home in place? Are we elevating that home? Are we reducing the risk of flood loss? Those types of things. The Housing Repair and Replacement Program we have run multiple times across multiple different storms. In our Hermine Matthew program, we had a subrecipient run housing program. Hurricane Irma, we ran that program and are running that program, slated to complete it directly out of our office, as well as the Hurricane Michael program and our Hurricane Ian housing program. So it's incredibly beneficial. This is a life-changing housing program where we're allowing people to essentially get a new start on life. Really proud of it. Talking about some of the traditional awards in this program, mobile home replacement. A lot of the times what we see is these mobile homes, they can be inherited through heirs property. So when we're looking at taking somebody who is in a situation where they have repeated loss in that structure, how can we make them more resilient against future disasters? So one of the things we did in our most recent housing program, took somebody who's on owned land, is in a manufactured housing unit. They may want a site-built traditional stick-built home, right? So we're going to give them that option. And that's something that we're going to do in this 23-24 storms program. If you're in a mobile home, if you're on owned land, obviously you'll have that option of receiving a replacement mobile home, but we're also going to give you that option of receiving a site-built home that's built to local building code and is really formidable and resilient against future disasters. Next slide, please. So just a couple more statistics about the housing program. This program is really run on a priority first basis. And when we talk about priority, we talk about the people who are most vulnerable or least likely to recover themselves. So in addition to ensuring, hey, if you received FEMA funding, you received SBA funding, insurance funding, what are the vulnerabilities of that household? What are the characteristics of that household? So households that have household members older than the age of 62, children younger than the age of 18, and or households with special needs or special accommodation requests will be prioritized first. Next slide, please. So as the state action plan is submitted to HUD and approved, the team is going to begin designing our program. We're sort of ahead of the curve on that, but we always want to take a lessons learned approach and look back and say, what can we do better? Conduct a retrospective, a lessons learned session and say, what did we do well? How can we do it even better? What did we not do, not so well, and what can we do better? Just continue to get better with our timeline, the expedience of this program, and the quality of the program. Next slide, please. So right here, you can see some of our, the positive outcomes from this program, and it's really incredible. I mentioned, this is a life-changing program, and, that was not hyperbole. These really are life-changing programs. So what you can see up there is a home we built in the Hurricane Michael housing program. It's just a great example of one of those sort of life-changing stories. This was a fully reconstructed home in Ebro, Florida, Washington County. This is a 3-bed, 2-bath configuration. Build was just about $268,000. We turned over the keys in June of 2023. Far more resilient home than what the homeowner had before. Just super proud of it. Next slide, please. We're going to go through a couple sort of happy success stories across the landscape of our housing programs. So here you can see a Hurricane Irma housing success story. This was a 3-2 bed bath configuration. We wrapped up construction in November 2023, just in time for the holidays. We love those stories. Get those people back in their homes with their families just around the holidays. It's great to see this again. Fully reconstructed home, built to code. Really proud of it. Next slide, please. Here you can see one of the examples of our manufactured housing unit replacement type project. You can see here this was in Clewiston, Florida, in Hendry County. 3-2 layout. We completed this one in 2022. As I said, we're going to give those homeowners the option. Hey, do you want, to go back into a mobile home replacement type project, which, as we know, is, such a central source of affordable housing in the state of Florida. So there are going to be many constituents and households that want to select that option. And this is just a great example of the positive outcome that we can see in these programs. Next slide, please. So here's an example of our Hurricane Ian housing program. Our Hurricane Ian housing program is currently fully operational. We're in construction. One of the things we're really proud of, and you can see the sort of visual outcome of how proud we are, this 3-2 configuration, turned over the keys in November of 2024. This program has already built 100 homes since we kicked off construction in late 2024. So in just a small window of time, we have already built 100 homes and counting. I'm sure I'm shortchanging ourselves. We're probably at 120 at this point in time, something we're really proud of. We had completed the first home by the 2-year anniversary of the Hurricane Ian storm. And that includes that timeline we talked about to get to the point of receiving the funding, opening up our programs. So not only to complete that first home by the 2-year anniversary, but to get to 100 homes within just a few months of kicking off this program, something that we're really proud of, and obviously has had a tremendous benefit to the community. Next slide, please. So you can see this home elevated in place. This is in Punta Gorda, Florida. We just wrapped up construction last month, actually. We got a wonderful quote from the homeowner and the household. But when we talk about life-changing, you see it right there. You see the smiles on the faces. You see that brand new home. I promise you they're going to be in a much better situation and far more resilient for years to come.
Tom, can I jump in? Just I want to accentuate a couple things that Tom and Justin said, and just to connect some dots too about how the housing programs work. First off, you said very correctly, we've learned a lot of lessons just watching the progression as to how we work with the storms. And one of the things that we've learned is it's really worth on the front end investing time early to work with resources on the ground. When Justin talked earlier about some administrative and planning funds, those funds largely go into making sure that these programs have a ground operation where people under contract with the department go into the communities to really work directly with, whether it's a homeowner or somebody who's advocating on their behalf. Many times the reason why that individual is even in need of these services is because, as Tom said, they don't have insurance, they didn't have help from FEMA, and there's probably one or more combination of vulnerabilities going on in that home. And so this really truly is a last resort for that individual. And we've learned that lesson, and that groundwork in advance, having those direct person-to-person connections with somebody, set clear expectations on the front end is incredibly important. So, and a lot of what Tom described in terms of the timeline, the benefit of having a clear progression of a timeline is set expectations, whether it's with an individual homeowner or whether it's with a local government regarding, let's say, an infrastructure or a mitigation project. Set clear expectations, set clear goals. There are a lot of contractors, construction involved in these projects. Setting clear goals in contract and in expectations with them. And so a lot of that work is done early to make sure, because we've learned the lessons, to make sure that the final product comes out in a way that either the homeowner or the community expects. So thanks so much for your explanation, but just really kind of want to add that point, that that's why a lot of that timeline, some of it's federally required, so some of it is what it is, but a lot of it is to make sure that from an expectation, contractual, and ultimately implementation standpoint, that a homeowner or a community is getting exactly what they want. So thanks so much, Tom.
Absolutely. Echo those sentiments from Secretary Kelly. We understand that these, homeowners are in a distressed situation coming into these programs. So we want to do everything we can to make sure that at the point in time that they apply to our program, it's smooth sailing and they completely understand, hey, how long is it going to take? What do I need to turn in? We've gotten better and better about just making sure that expectations are clearly set, and it's a just completely positive situation and outcome for this homeowner throughout the entire process. So I'm going to turn it over to my peer, fellow Bureau Chief Leisha Behenna, and she's going to talk about a couple of other programs that we are proposing for this funding allocation.
The infrastructure program will distribute funding to eligible subrecipients as units of local government for infrastructure repair and replacement, as well as improvement projects to impacted communities. Eligible activities can include stormwater management projects, restoration or improvement of damaged infrastructure and repair to buildings. Priorities will be given to projects in the most impacted areas, such as LMI areas, and those in physically constrained counties, as defined in Florida Statute 218.67 Pren 1. Additionally, infrastructure projects may incorporate mitigation measures which help increase resiliency and help us combat future risk. Next slide, please. Moving on to our last proposed program, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Match Program. We will provide the 25% match for programs funded by FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Program. Priority will be given to projects in the most impacted LMI areas and those in the physically constrained counties. In conjunction with FEMA HMGMP funds, these funds will allow the awarded units of general local government to execute necessary and significant infrastructure projects that they may not have otherwise had the monetary means to complete, such as structural elevation, localized flood risk reduction, infrastructure retrofitting, and hardening. Projects must meet both FEMA and HUD requirements to be eligible for the HMGMP funding. To learn more about the eligible activities in the HMGMP program, please refer to the HMGMP handout in the front of the room where everybody walked in. Next slide, please. Infrastructure programs will follow this process. Development of the action plan as related to infrastructure involves the unmet need assessment, input from citizens and stakeholders to determine infrastructure repair, improvement, and mitigation needs in eligible communities. After our state action plan is approved, program design will ensure activities focus on making long-term restoration and resiliency improvements for storm damage infrastructure, which it can include water and sewer facilities, streets, public facilities, and emergency shelters. During the application cycle, due dates, instructions, application requirements, and fillable forms to assist potential subrecipients in applying for the program funds will be posted on the FloridaCommerce website. Contact information for applicants to request TA will also be posted. Following the application period, FloridaCommerce will score proposals, select projects for funding. Some selected subrecipients will implement programs with monitoring and oversight by FloridaCommerce. And this process will likely include some site visits. And with that, I'm going to turn the discussion back to Assistant Deputy Secretary Justin Domer.
Thank you, Leisha. This is louder. You're right, Emily. Again, thank you all for being here today. For our folks up here, our secretary, and Tom and Leisha for also being here. Like Leisha was just mentioning, technical assistance calls. You know, if there's any community out there that is one of our eligible counties or cities, you know, we are very open to having technical assistance calls so that we can help guide through this process. We understand it's a lengthy process, and we want to be here to help. We don't want to be an additional roadblock. We want to be, you know, a conduit to the funding for those communities in need. So what we will do is take a couple minutes to let folks that are here in the audience or even online give comment cards so that we can have some public comment here in just a few minutes. So we'll go ahead and do that. The table in the back has public comment cards. You can raise your hand, and then I believe on line, I'm not sure what that process is, Matea. Okay, I think they're putting that in the chat here on Teams. So with that, we'll just take a couple minutes.
I think too, while we're taking a couple minutes too, it's just worth saying that truly local input matters. And I'll give a basic example, as Justin was talking earlier about the distribution of housing money, infrastructure money, mitigation money. You know, a community may look at a variety of challenges and say, well, look, we have some of all of those challenges, but you may look at maybe an area that's flooded in the community. You may say, well, the reality is that if we just simply mitigate the issue as to why the flooding occurred, that may be the best decision. So in any of these cases, and you also may say that housing needs may be different from community to community, right? In terms of, is it single family housing needs? Is it multifamily housing needs? So all of those details really do matter as to how we distribute these funds and ultimately work with each community. So again, we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, that reminds me too, you know, when we've been meeting with the counties, one thing that we try to remind each of those is to be open-minded about the damage, because sometimes I'll use maybe some stormwater, for example, even if there wasn't damage to the actual stormwater of the county or the city, if the capacity wasn't large enough to handle the flood water and it caused damage down the line to a business or a home, that is damage. And so that's where we are here to help kind of be that sounding board, to think creatively and open-minded about, you know, what the needs are. So, all right. Are you ready?
Good afternoon. Yeah, I just have one question I was kind of concerned about. Some of my friends are also. We all know that COVID overwhelmed the capacity of everybody. COVID overwhelmed the capacity of everybody, you know, and in particular, the implementation of Hurricane Irma program. And, you know, a lot of awardees, you know, often didn't get any communication back for months at a time, and just had some bad consequences of that. But thank goodness everything's a lot better now. The last couple of years, I wanted to thank FloridaCommerce and everybody being responsive to those of us that are still left from Irma. My main question is now, if we have multiple storms again, what capacity, what plans have you all made to make it some kind of direct line of communication for awardees to actually speak to somebody and, you know, have a direct line of communication so they can get an answer back? And it's really, the reason I even came today to ask this question is with the talk of FEMA drastically being downsized, they're talking about adding that capacity to Florida. And no state in the country, as we've seen in California, has the ability now to, you know, take billions of dollars and be able to administer it correctly. So it's a new problem for everybody, but it could realistically happen here in Florida. And I know there were some, well, because everybody learned from Irma, so it's better. I'm just wondering, are y'all planning for the future and about the possible FEMA downsizing being shifted to Florida and possibly multiple storms? Thank you.
Mr. Hurd, thank you for that. Yes, so, you know, everybody that is in our program, the homeowners are assigned to a case manager, and then that case manager is that person's point of contact. We also have an internal constituent team. We have about 4 or 5 people on that, and they are constantly available, communicating with folks directly all day long, every week. So yes, communication is something that we do take serious, and we believe that is, you know, very important. So we're doing that. As far as the comment about FEMA, these funds come from HUD. So, you know, changes in the federal government, again, changes in the federal government overall are something that, you know, we don't have any control over, but we do not foresee any issues right now from any of the proposed changes that we've heard, you know, in the media impacting our programs at all.
And thanks, Justin. I would just add to an approach I think we've taken in recent years, and maybe why we're sort of watching the FEMA question, but not as maybe as immediately alarmed, maybe as some other states. It's just we've taken an approach in recent years of we just move first, and if FEMA comes in to support, that's wonderful, that's great. There's been plenty of great partnership, but whether it's, you know, before the storm, during the storm, immediately after, and as we're talking about here today, the long-term recovery, we operate under the lens of assume that no one's coming in to help. What would we do then if no one's coming in to help? For example, a number of times, including in some of the grant programs, just the regular standing grant programs that this division of community development, also our division of economic development, have managed. We've many times surged those grant programs around storm recovery specific needs. For example, today, right now, our small cities CDBG grants, they're in an open application window till May 5th, and they can be used by smaller communities that typically don't have a lot of resources available to them. And we're actually encouraging those communities that have a combination of a storm-related need with an economic development benefit to take a look at those grant programs now, because while we're talking about a large package of funding here through HUD, at the end of the day, as it was presented, that still only probably meets about a third of the needs. I think that what we said, about $3 billion in needs, but we've gotten about $925 million. So we really do try to search some of our other resources. That's something that we've learned to do these last 3 to 4 years, rather than just wait for whenever that HUD allocation comes, because to be quite frank, that HUD allocation that includes the 2024 storms, it also includes Hurricane Idalia from 2023. We never received an allocation for Hurricane Idalia till basically late December 2024. So, essentially surge those other resources early. The other thing that I think we've gotten pretty good at is, and we did this because of COVID, really, when the state had to respond quickly. People needed help and people needed answers, is we've learned how to do things like prop up phone calling centers quickly through contractors. So where we need to respond to a mass amount of constituents quickly, basically bring on through contract other resources, so that if we're flooded with sources to address those needs. This year, a very specific example, after Hurricanes Helene and Milton, we surged the number of people at our call centers to answer calls about reemployment, because for about a month there were a lot of calls. It settled down, but for about a month there was a peak in calls, and so we brought on additional call center support, and we creatively use funds to surge those needs, because it does happen. And you're right, we need to be able to respond quickly. So we've learned some good lessons about how to creatively use funds and resources. And again, don't wait for that federal partnership. We hope it's there. Sometimes, obviously, clearly, we're talking about federal partnership today, but it's not always there, and so we don't wait for it if we don't have to.
Thank you, Secretary Kelly. Do we have any other public comment in the audience? Yes, sir. I think she's got a mic for you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Forbes. Thank you very much for coming down. I appreciate it. I appreciate the hard work, and sounds fantastic. A lot of great information. I have one simple question. So I represent a client who, without a doubt, falls under that at risk and vulnerable grouping. And I would just like to know, what is the first step that I would direct this person to do? Online, phone, where do I reach out to get the ball rolling? And I can figure it out from there. Just the first step.
Sure. Great question. So actually, when we go to the next slide, well, actually, before you switch to that, this email address right here, the 2023 and 2024 storms, it's very important. It is something that we all check. I get emails from it all the time. So that is a very good point of contact. We're also going to have, I believe on the next slide, a QR code that you can scan. I know we have, so right here, there's a citizen update. We're also going to do a pre-application survey, so that those folks like who you're talking about can go ahead and get us their information, so that when we do open up applications, they're the first to get in there.
Perfect.
So yes, sir. I know Tom may have some other ideas for in the meantime before our applications open. Do you have anything you would add, Tom?
I would say, most importantly right now is that pre-application assessment. Thanks, sir. That pre-application assessment is really what is going to ensure that those that are most in need are the first ones who are able to apply, and the first ones who are able to have a case manager assigned to them, walk them through what can be an administratively burdensome process. But in the meantime, that is the first step that survivor needs to take. We're already working with long-term recovery groups, VOADs, the NGO network to ensure that we're kind of doing, we're carrying out the most sort of canvassing outreach approach right now. This is the sort of federally required step, but we already started months ago in ensuring that, folks like your client, before we have an official application opening, they can already sort of get in the door, get us some information that can essentially pre-qualify them. So that QR code, that website link, that email, all critically important. We can go back to headquarters tomorrow, and if they filled something out today, we'll be able to see it.
Leave it up for 10 seconds after I sit down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just want to add too, it's a great question. And really for anyone who's listening, there are also resources that if people have other challenges related to their housing needs, utility needs, if they're having trouble with variety of things, commodities, utilities that they might need help with in their home, there are services right now for any Floridian who's having those challenges. While there's the process for the actual repair and rebuild of the home, if they have other needs, we work with the Community Action Agency that represent all 67 counties around the state. So we're happy to be a bridge to connect anyone here or anyone online or someone that they represent to those services. There's also the hopeflorida.org portal where Floridians who maybe want to connect with nonprofit resources that are available around the state, particularly faith-based resources. So we want to make sure anyone who's in need of something today, a commodity, help with the utilities, something like that, please don't wait. Please ask now. We're happy to make those connections for anyone.
What county is the person you're referencing? They're in Martin? Okay. Yeah, I'll get with you after, and then the local community action agency may have some resources for that person as well. Anything else from the audience? Emily?
I think we can go to the person online. We're going to test out our technologically savviness. If Neil, who has his hand raised, can unmute and speak, hopefully we'll be able to hear you.
Hi, good afternoon. I just wanted to submit a comment about what we're doing with Plaid Homes. We're the biggest producer globally of modular steel mini homes. We're completing a contract with the Miami-Dade Homeless Trust and just wanted to connect sometime.
Neil, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to do one quick thing. Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
All right, Neil, one more time.
So we're with Plaid Homes. We're the largest producer of mini homes and modular steel buildings globally. We wanted to explore being able to provide housing for displaced folks in Florida. We're deploying a contract with the Miami-Dade Homeless Trust for 180 mini home units in Homestead.
Do you want to speak as well, or do you want me to?
Oh, we were done with the comment. We just wanted to submit that and share materials on what we're doing by email.
Okay, thank you. The comment from Luke in the chat is he would like to comment that communities will have a greater benefit from infrastructure dollars if it is open to new infrastructure to support our community and better withstand disaster rather than it being exclusively for repair, replacement, or hardening. And Luke, so there is a portion of these funds that is set aside for mitigation so that you can do some of that, prevention work. And when you are doing any of a repair, replacement, or hardening, you always do keep that, the mitigation aspect front of mind. And then, like we were kind of talking about earlier, we'd love to hear more about your exact issue that you're referencing so that we can maybe, brainstorm on that together. So you also please reach out.
Luke says thank you.
And I do have one more from somebody that said, I would like to mention as an FYI, homeowners, renters, and businesses have until April 27th, which is reopened from the original January 7th deadline, to submit an SBA application for physical damage incurred from Helene and Milton at sba.gov/disaster. And they said, thank you all. So I think that was more of a statement. Thank you for that. It's very helpful.
Justin, just to go back to the point that Luke was bringing up in that question, where communities have a specific, let's say, infrastructure or mitigation project in mind, Justin's point's a great point. Just much like the individual housing need, where you can already, in effect, get in line, if you will, even though the program's not open yet. For mitigation and infrastructure needs, the team's available every day to talk through what those projects are. We actually really like to hear early and often what those projects are. Sometimes, as I mentioned, I gave an example of another program. Sometimes we have a way to serve that need now, or at least get the community started. And other times, it just helps us think, okay, this is what the community is working towards. Let's think about the whole toolkit of what FloridaCommerce, our other agency partners have, because at the end of the day, we recognize the need is the need, and the community has a project, the community has something that's recovery oriented or mitigation oriented. If we know early, we can start working with you, brainstorming on solutions now. So we love to get that phone call, do that kind of technical assistance, and it just gives us, frankly, more chances to figure out a way to serve the community's need.
Thank you, sir. And also, as the secretary mentioned earlier, we do have the Community Development Block Grant for Small Cities that is currently an open cycle right now. There's $38 million available. That is open to small and rural communities. We have an eligibility list on our website as well. And then, so if you're on that list, you know, that's something that we also would love to have some technical assistance calls with, because we might be able to get ahead of this funding. We're also really good at looking at, you know, projects and maybe stacking funding or phasing things out. So we love to hear what your needs are, and then we can help kind of back you into what the best options are for you. So. All right, that was great. I appreciate that. Again, here are 2 QR codes. The blue is for citizen, the green is for stakeholder. If you scan those, I know that's going to take you to a website where you can sign up for updates, and that's the best way to be able to keep up with what we have going on. One more time, again, I do really appreciate all of you that are here in person and online and have participated. It is truly important, as we kind of shared earlier. Again, thank you to Secretary Kelly for being here, for Tom and for Alicia both, and for your teams, and then our other team members here in the audience, that everybody's been working very hard, and we've accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time, and we're very proud of that. So again, just a little reminder, our state action plan is posted online right now, and that is open for public comment period until, I believe it's April 19th. Does that sound right? Thank you for nodding your head. And so that's also, you still have the opportunity to go ahead and public comment on there as well. We do take all of those public comments, we review all of them, and they're also included in the final action plan that is submitted to HUD by the April 21st deadline. So again, please get us that input. And again, thank you for being here today. And here is on the screen the email address again that we do check regularly. All of us get those emails, and then there's also a U.S. Postal Service address for our building as well. So thanks again, and have a great afternoon and a great weekend.